He was not born into wealth or privilege, nor was he guided by the straight lines of rules and regulations that society clung to. From the very beginning, he understood something most never dared to admit. The world was not designed for the honest, it was designed for the clever. He saw loopholes where others saw walls, shortcuts where others trudged through the long road. To him, life was not about following the rules, it was about bending them just enough to slip through unnoticed. That was the art of the hustle, and he mastered it like a musician with a single instrument, tuning his skills to perfection until every move was a performance in deception. His earliest hustles were small, almost harmless in the eyes of outsiders. Selling counterfeit sneakers to schoolmates, fixing card games in his favor, whispering lies with a smile so smooth that even when caught, he could twist the truth into a believable excuse. But these were only rehearsals. He knew he wasn't destined to stay in the shadows of playground tricks. He had bigger ambitions, and every trick he played, every scam he pulled, was another lesson in human psychology. People didn't want truth, they wanted what they wished was true. And he was always ready to sell it to them. The turning point came when he realized the hustle could be dressed in the costume of legitimacy. Cheating didn't always have to look like cheating. It could wear a suit, open an office, and smile behind a desk. He started with a fake consulting company, promising to connect small businesses with exclusive investors. Most of the investors never existed, but the businesses paid fees anyway. He kept just enough of the game real, one deal closed here, a small profit delivered there, to keep the illusion alive. Perception, he discovered, was more valuable than reality. If people believed you were successful, they'd hand you everything in hopes of sharing in the illusion. Money began to flow. With it came connections, and with connections came opportunities to scale his hustle. He built companies not around products, but around promises. Real estate deals that stretched the truth of land value, import-export businesses that thrived more on forged paperwork than actual goods, and even an online platform that claimed to revolutionize e-commerce, but was little more than smoke and mirrors designed to attract investors. The beauty of it all was that each layer of success hid the rot beneath. As long as people saw growth, headlines, and profits on paper, no one asked too many questions. And if they did, he always had another trick ready, another forged document, another convincing performance to keep the game alive. What set him apart from petty cheats was his vision. He understood the psychology of greed, the hunger of investors, the desperation of customers, and the vanity of competitors. He didn't just cheat for quick cash. He crafted a narrative, a story so compelling that people wanted to believe in him. He became the man who had the answers, the one who always found a way to win. Journalists wrote about him. Magazines praised his innovative methods, and television hosts invited him on to share his secrets of success. He never told them the real secret, that everything was stitched together with lies and half-truths. Instead, he spoke in riddles about persistence, vision, and hustle, words that meant little but sounded profound. As his empire grew, so did the risks. Authorities sniffed around, competitors whispered accusations, and old partners demanded their cut. But he had mastered the art of diversion. He donated to charities, shook hands with politicians, and hired the best lawyers to clean his tracks. Every time the walls seemed to close in, he found a way to push them back, to buy himself more time. He thrived in the chaos, because chaos was where hustlers like him flourished. The system was built to be exploited, and he knew it better than anyone else. In time, his businesses became so large, so embedded in the economy, that unraveling his lies would have meant pulling threads that too many others relied on. Banks depended on his investments, employees fed their families with the salaries he provided, governments looked to him for tax revenues. He had cheated so brilliantly, so relentlessly, that his empire had become real. What began as scams and shortcuts transformed into genuine power, simply because the world could no longer afford to admit it had been fooled. Behind the polished image and the empire of glass towers, he still carried the same smirk he had as a boy fixing card games. He knew the truth. He hadn't won by playing fair. He had won by rewriting the rules. The art of the hustle was not just about lies or tricks. It was about survival, about creating a reality so strong that even those who knew it was a lie had no choice but to believe. And in that world, the classic cheat had done more than cheat the system. He had conquered it. He had always carried a certain presence, the kind that made people lean in when he spoke, though his words rarely held more substance than smoke. Even as a teenager, he had the uncanny ability to make others believe what he wanted them to believe. Teachers excused his late homework when he spun tales of family crises. Shopkeepers trusted him on credit after he promised to pay tomorrow. Friends laughed off his constant wins in card games, convinced it was luck, when in truth his fingers worked faster than their eyes. What began as survival, small tricks to navigate a world that offered him nothing, soon hardened into a philosophy. Rules were chains for the weak, and he would never let himself be bound. When he was 19, he pulled his first big stunt. Using a second-hand computer and an old printer, he forged admission letters to prestigious universities. For a fee, he sold them to desperate students who couldn't get in through merit. He knew they wouldn't last long once the institutions discovered the fakes, but by then he would be gone, pockets lined. When one angry parent tracked him down, he didn't panic, he talked. With smooth persuasion and a promise of connections, he convinced the man to invest in a tutoring business he claimed to be building. Instead of exposing him, the parent became his first unknowing investor. That was when he learned the golden rule of the hustle: never run from exposure, flip it, twist it, and profit from it. By his 20s, he was staging bigger illusions. He rented offices in rundown buildings, but dressed them with glass doors and rented furniture. He wore cheap suits tailored to fit perfectly, giving the illusion of luxury. He paid extras, friends, cousins, strangers, to sit in his office, answering fake phone calls to make it appear as though business was booming. Investors walked in and saw not a struggling fraud, but a rising star. Money poured in, and with it came his first real taste of power. He knew better than to blow it all on fast cars or gold chains. His purchases were strategic. A sleek car for the image, a penthouse apartment to host meetings, and expensive dinners where he made sure the right people saw him. Perception was the only currency that mattered. He never needed to show the truth. He only needed to make others fear missing out on his success. And greed, he discovered, was the sharpest tool in his kit. If he dangled the possibility of wealth before someone, they would blind themselves to the cracks in his story. His empire expanded into real estate. He convinced small-time investors that he had access to undervalued properties in developing areas. In reality, many of the deeds were fake, and some of the land didn't even exist. But a few deals went through, enough to keep the dream alive. The investors who saw returns became his loudest supporters, bringing in more money, more trust. Even the ones who lost money rarely called him a cheat. They blamed the market, bad luck, or their own timing. That was the brilliance of his hustle. He never gave people a complete lie. He gave them half a truth, just enough to make them complicit in their own deception. By 30, his name was printed in magazines. Headlines called him the visionary entrepreneur and self-made mogul. He sat on panels, lectured at universities, and shook hands with politicians. Every spotlight that shone on him buried his past deeper in shadow. He hired accountants to launder his money, lawyers to protect his deals, and publicists to polish his image. Behind the curtain, he was still forging signatures, still faking reports, still weaving illusions, but now he wore legitimacy like armor. And yet, he was never reckless. He knew the downfall of most hustlers came from arrogance, from believing they were untouchable. He played the long game. He let others take the fall when scandals surfaced, sacrificing pawns to protect his king. He made small concessions, even allowed regulators to fine him occasionally, just enough to make it look as though he was playing fair. Each time, he emerged stronger, feeding the narrative that he was a survivor, a fighter who overcame obstacles. People admired him more for it, never realizing the obstacles were ones he had planted himself. Years passed, and the line between illusion and reality blurred. The businesses that had started as shells began to generate real revenue. The fake investments snowballed into genuine wealth because money attracts money, and success, whether real or fabricated, always draws more believers. His lies had created the foundation, but the world's hunger for profit had built the walls and roof of his empire. There were nights, rare and fleeting, when he looked at his reflection and wondered if he had gone too far, if the empire would crumble should anyone pull too hard on the threads. But those doubts never lingered. In the morning, he rose, put on a suit, and played his part again. He had built an identity too powerful to abandon. To stop hustling would be to admit he had been a fraud all along, and that was something he could never allow. He became a legend of his own making, a living testament to the philosophy he had carried since boyhood, that the world did not reward honesty, it rewarded audacity. He was not a businessman in the traditional sense. He was a magician, a storyteller, a master illusionist who turned lies into gold. And while many envied him, and some despised him, none could deny that he had done what few ever dared to attempt. He had taken the art of the hustle and turned it into an empire.